we'll be walking through product carbon footprint in Microsoft Sustainability Manager. And so, yeah, I'll start with a quick intro. Let me move that. So I'm a product manager on the sustainability team. I've been here for about 6 months, so still relatively new to the space. And I've been working recently on the ESG value chain solution, as well as some of our investments and allocations and product carbon footprint, which I'll be talking about today. And so, yeah, to quickly go through the agenda, I'll start with context setting just about what PCF is, our overarching investments on product carbon footprint within cloud for sustainability. I'll go through a pretty quick roadmap, and then, yeah, I'll end with the demo and then some Q&A. And as Kelsey mentioned, yeah, feel free to put your questions in the chat, and we'll get to as many as we can at the end. And so no prereqs for this talk. Yeah, so I'll start with just understanding what product carbon footprint is. I like to draw the distinction between corporate emissions, which are asking like the overall footprint of an organization across different scopes, versus a product carbon footprint, which I think of as just a horizontal slice of that footprint. And so to generate this specific or to produce this specific product, what are all the emissions that had to go into that? Including, and this diagram's from the GHG protocol, including life cycle phases like the material acquisition, production, distribution, storage, use, end of life, and several others. So yeah, quite a bit in there. And then we've been seeing increasing traction around PCF from our customers, and I think two main kind of key incentives for our customers. Number one, PCF helps our customers understand their scope 3 impact in more detail and more precision. And so, yeah, without PCF, customers often have to use kind of high-level secondary factors versus if they can get kind of specific product carbon footprints from their suppliers, they can more precisely account for the scope 3 footprint, which for many organizations accounts for a huge part of their footprint. So that's number one, understanding the scope 3 footprint, and then that level of precise understanding then leads to being able to mitigate that footprint. And so if I have a detailed understanding of my value chain emissions using product carbon footprint, I can identify hotspots in that value chain, like kind of key suppliers that are contributing to a lot of my scope 3 emissions, or key product lines that I'm making, key materials, etc. And then number two, that then puts pressure that we're also seeing on some of these earlier players in the value chain. So like my producer of components or my producer of raw materials, they're getting pressure from those organizations further down in the value chain who need those PCFs to understand their own scope 3 emissions. And then finally, we're seeing added kind of regulatory pressure for all the players in the value chain, kind of from the raw material producers to the kind of final product finished good producers, increase regulatory pressure around understanding the product carbon footprint. And so now getting concrete and bringing it to the product, three main areas of investment for us around product and product carbon footprint. Number one is within Fabric, and I won't talk too much about that today, but within Fabric, we're adding some data model concepts around product and product carbon footprint, which should help customers who are trying to build some of these more custom and advanced scenarios. And then within the ESG value chain solution, Microsoft Sustainability Manager, we're enabling the ingestion of this product carbon footprint data from value chain partners, and then using that within Sustainability Manager to generate and to come up with scope 3 emissions. And then also we're adding some more flexibility in the reports to be able to view emissions in terms of product as well. And that's some more feedback we've gotten from customers. And so again, right now we're focused more on this first scenario, this upstream scenario where I'm consuming a PCF from earlier in the value chain and using that to come up with my own emissions. We know there's a lot of interest and demand around the second piece, the downstream case, where I'm accounting for my own emissions, accounting for my value chain emissions to produce a PCF. Today I'll be focused, yeah, again on this first scenario, this upstream scenario using PCF. But yeah, further on, we're going to start investing in this downstream case as well. I won't be able to talk too much about that today, but just wanted to kind of flag that here because I know it's a significant area of interest for many of our customers. So today I'll be focused on the PCF data model we've introduced for storing those ingested PCFs from suppliers, the value chain investments around ingesting these PCFs from suppliers, and then what I call this foundations investment around using that PCF to drive scope 3 calculation and seeing reports based on product. And so again, just these four main pieces: the data model, injection, calculation of scope 3 emissions using PCF as an input, and then slicing reports by basic product information. And the core business value we're trying to drive is understanding the overall emissions using ingested product data and also slicing by product. And so I'll now kick it over to the demo. And so we'll go through each of these four pieces. So with that. Awesome. So we're now in Microsoft Sustainability Manager, and we can see here we're in the reference data pane, and this is where I can see my product information and my product footprint information. And so in this specific example, I'm a coffee company who's selling coffee drinks, and I'm buying coffee beans from my supplier, Fourth Coffee. So I have all these SKUs that I'm buying in the sustainability items table, and I can see that they're coming from Fourth Coffee. And then I have SKUs for these three different bean types: the Robusta, Liberica, and Arabica. And then I have different sizes and different blends, different roasts for each of these different bean types. And so buying quite a few different SKUs from my supplier. And in this scenario, I want to ingest PCF data from my supplier and use that to compute my scope 3 emissions. And so pretty simple scenario, but should show the overall end-to-end. And so I have my SKU data here in the item table. And then here in the product footprint table, I have the PCF data I've gotten from my supplier for each specific SKU, what the footprint is of one unit of that. And so this is pretty flexible, like this PCF definition. We can also define PCFs for, like, for example, if I'm buying the raw beans, I can define what the footprint is of 1 kilogram of that bean, for example. And so we followed the Pathfinder framework for this product footprint definition. And so that's meant to be kind of an interoperable standard for these product footprints. It enables like a lot of, in this basic scenario, we don't have a lot of that data, but enables a lot of potential richness for this PCF data, including some of the methodology details, some of the data quality details, etc. So just to recap, I have the SKUs I'm buying from my suppliers, and I have the product footprints for each of those SKUs. And then now the missing piece is how much I'm buying and when, and that's where my activity data comes in. And core kind of sustainability manager concept of taking the activity data and using the calc to turn that into an emission. And so that's what we'll see here. And here our activity data captures what SKU I purchased when, and we've added to that activity data a direct reference to the product carbon footprint. So while we wait for that to load, this product carbon footprint factor, which we can use now in calculations to come up with the impact of this purchase good and service activity. And so what's going to happen there, we're going to multiply that product footprint we saw by the goods quantity, and we'll show that in a calc model. So that's the core data model, is this product footprint concept linked to our sustainability item table, linked to our product table as well. And then now the ability to reference that footprint from a bunch of different activity types, in addition to being able to reference the product concept from these activities as well. And we separated these out to enable some of the more complex kind of upstream, downstream scenarios where the product I want to attribute the activity to is not necessarily the same as the product the footprint is coming from. So I'll now, before I get into the calc, just go through some of the ingestion story for this. So as I mentioned, I can use the value chain or the ESG value chain solution to directly ingest this from suppliers. And so here I'm now in the shoes of Fourth Coffee, my supplier. And and they've been sent this survey to create product footprints for the various SKUs that we're getting from them. And then also, if I'm getting this information from in some other way from a supplier, if, for example, there's hundreds or thousands of SKUs I'm getting from them, I can also upload directly using kind of the standard Sustainability Manager ingestion capabilities. So just again to recap, we have the product footprints and we have the purchase goods and services activities, which tell us exactly how much of which product we purchased. And now we'll get into the fun part, which is the calculation itself. Let me just try to get there. Awesome. And so this is one of the standard models we ship out of the box. And so in addition to the standard purchase goods and services, which does a spend-based calculation, we've added this PCF-based calculation for, again, like a more granular view of those Scope 3 emissions. And so here, instead of using like a spend-based factor, we're specifically multiplying, as I mentioned, the goods quantity by the PCF. And so here we've added this ability, instead of using a factor to drive the Scope 3 calculation, we can use an ingested PCF value to enable that Scope 3 calculation. And we can specifically select like what attribute on that PCF data we want to use. And then also, yeah, if this is a biogenic or not, if this emission is biogenic or not. And so, yeah, now we run that calc model in this calc profile. And so here we're filtering just to that activity data that has a product footprint. And for that data, we know if we have a product footprint, we want to use it instead of using a more general secondary factor. And so in that case, we reference this PCF-based purchase goods and services model. And so, yeah, again, the MSM flow of activity to calc to emissions. And so that then results in these emissions that are, yeah, again, being computed by quantity of good multiplied by that PCF value. And then, yeah, finally, that then also contributes to my overarching emissions dashboard. And this is where we're also adding, it's not here yet, we're still finalizing that piece, but we're also adding the ability to slice these overall emissions by product as well. And yeah, that's feedback we've heard from many of our customers, that like they view their like a core dimension for their emissions is what product line it's associated with. And so that's a piece we're adding here as well as part of these overall product footprint investments. So again, yeah, just to recap, and I'll head back to the deck. We went through how we can ingest this PCF data using either Sustainability Manager, and some of that data, like purchase goods and services, is an organization's own data, and also ingest supplier data using the ESG value chain solution. And then using the Sustainability Manager's PCF data model to store some of that product and product footprint data, and then using that product footprint data to compute these Scope 3 emissions. And then, yeah, we've enabled this for other categories in addition to just Scope 3 Cat 1. And then finally, talk briefly about these upcoming reporting investments. And so, yeah, I think the recording for this one will be up soon. But obviously, yeah, PCF and value chain go super hand in hand. And so definitely would recommend, if you missed it, catching up on Layla's session yesterday around the ESG value chain end to end. Yeah, and again, yeah, we'll have kind of more to share around future PCF investments in the coming months. So stay tuned. And with that, yeah, I'll open it up for questions, and then yeah, also just point to our technical docs in the learn.microsoft contain some details about everything I showed here today.